It's that time of the week. It's Doggy Pod time.
G'day possums, and how are they hanging?
Oh my God.
That's for the Australians. Now, the translation is, welcome everybody, good to see you again on the Doggy Pod, and I hope everything is well in your world and you're having a great day.
That's Dr. Rob Zammit. I don't quite know. How are they hanging?
Yeah, well, yeah, how's everything in your world? Is having a good day? That's it.
Okay, we'll let that one go through to the keeper. My name's Stephen Peters.
Wait a minute, through to the keeper, folks. For those people that don't play cricket, that's what it means. When the ball comes down, it looks like a bad ball, and it's not going to hit the wicket. It goes through to the keeper.
Isn't this podcast supposed to be about dogs?
Yeah, it goes the whole 9 yards, doesn't it? Oh, that's from American term now. Let's get on with the podcast.
Yeah, let's get. Anyway, thanks for listening to the Doggy Pod. Today we're going to talk about dogs and babies, the do's and the don'ts.
Very close to my heart. My eldest daughter is about to have her first baby.
Ah, well, you'll be able to give us all sorts of good intel. Okay.
We're also going to talk about interbreeding of dogs. Yeah, is it too much? And we're going to talk about all things oodles and other popular crosses.
Yeah, there seems to be every dog has an oodle in it somewhere.
These days, a lot of them do.
We'll talk about why. We're also going to chat about what happens if you get bitten by a dog. Is there still such a thing as rabies? A few episodes back we touched on this a little bit, but what happens if you get bitten by a dog? What's the first thing you should do?
And there's also a top 5 coming, folks.
A top 5?
Yes, the top 5. We've done the top 5 smartest breeds. Today we're going to do the top 5 dumbest.
The top 5 dumbest.
The top 5 stupidest, dumbest.
Wow. Okay, that sounds controversial straight away. So before we get to that, how's the week been at the clinic? What's been happening?
Well, we've had 2 cases. I was not party to either of them because my veterinarians were doing the after-hours work on both the cases of bloat. We've talked a bit about bloat from time to time. In dogs, people say it's when they eat too fast or when they exercise after eating. Not so in either of these cases. They're normal foods, but if you do feed abnormal foods, you can get bloat. If your dog is a fast eater, you might want to try and get some of those bowls that slow them down with the eating process, and never exercise after eating. And try...
You never exercise after eating?
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
No, you must not do that because you can get bloat. Bloat is where the stomach starts filling up with foam and gas because the food inside is fermenting. And then the worst part of bloat is if it turns over. The stomach turns, does virtually 180 degrees on itself, and eventually blocks off the entrance and the exit of the stomach. A real emergency crisis, and it happened in both these cases. The vets had to open the dogs up, rotate the stomach back into position.
Wow.
One of the dogs had some black areas in the stomach because what happens, the bacteria in your stomach, the good bacteria, all of a sudden become bad. They become opportunistic pathogens. They attack the wall of the intestines or the stomach. In this case, the stomach was getting attacked badly. Some of it was black. One of the vets had to remove virtually half of the stomach from the dog because once it's gone gangrenous, once it's bad, you can't keep it there. You leave it there, the dog will die. So to remove a big portion of the stomach and sew it all up and fix it up so it doesn't happen again, very difficult to do. You have to stitch the stomach down to the wall of the abdomen, and that stops rotation. It doesn't stop bloat. Bloat can reoccur. In fact, statistically, once a dog gets bloat, the recurrence rate is very, very high. It'll happen again and again. And very often, once they get it once, they will eventually die of bloat. So it's something you have to be very careful of. You have to be careful how you feed the dog, what you feed the dog, when you feed the dog, how you exercise the dog, etc.
But most dogs will eat a meal like it's their last meal on the planet.
Oh, and they
wolf it down.
Yeah, one of the weird things, people have tried to study bloat in scientific trials. They've never been able to properly reproduce it. It's a very hard thing to reproduce. There's certain breeds that are predisposed to it. It's dogs that have deep chests. They're the ones that have it. Standard poodles are known to have deep chests. The short-legged basset hound has a very deep chest. Only short legs, but very big body and very deep chest. Rottweilers have deep chests. German Shepherds, of course, get bloat. A lot of these Weimaraners, big dogs with deep chests, often get bloat. Any breed can get it. I've seen it in lots of different breeds, and it's possible that just even a Kelpie could get bloat.
So what
What
were the symptoms of these dogs? Like if you've got a dog and it's got bloat, what will you notice?
First thing you might notice, the dog's trying to vomit but doesn't get anywhere. They continue to try to regurgitate, trying to bring up, trying to empty out their stomach because they can feel the pressure and the pain. They're trying to vomit, they're trying to eat grass, but nothing is coming up. You may notice the actual side of the abdomen that's just past the ribs, feel where the ribs are. The tummy there starts to get bigger. You'll see that. Often they'll collapse and they can even, virtually drop dead.
Are they in pain?
I'm guessing. The pain is unbelievable. Something has to be done to relieve the pain. Sometimes they'll come into us and we'll just shave the side and either put a big needle in or just slash the side and we'll put a local anaesthetic in. The dog's too compromised because all that pressure stops the blood going back to the heart. It compromises the breathing. They can't breathe very well. So we'll put some local in, slash it, and just empty it out straight away. I have at times had to get the stomach and slice it open and then pull it out and stitch it open to the outside. So it keeps emptying, and it keeps on emptying for 24 hours that way. It's called marsupialization because it's got a pouch, if you like, to the outside. And then after 24 hours of stabilising the dog, because it's been so sick and it's now stabilised, we then go in and do the surgical repairs. So it can be so bad, they can present so badly, so compromised, you're not going to give them an anaesthetic. You give them an anaesthetic, you know they're going to die. So under local anaesthetic, I have actually opened up the stomach under local anaesthetic and then stitched it virtually to the two edges, the two margins where I've opened up, I stitch onto the outside of the skin. So the stomach is emptying itself outside.
Bizarre.
Yep, it is. But when you see the dog's colour coming back to the gums, you see the dog being able to breathe, and you see everything starting to stabilise with his cardiovascular system, you thank God. You hope that there's no dead gangrenous stuff yet, and you've got some time. You, of course, put these dogs on a drip straight away. You give them lots of intravenous antibiotics and you treat for cardiovascular shock, the heart and the blood pressure. You treat all that. If you can stabilise them, then you've got the next day, usually you will go in straight away and start fixing and repairing everything else. But first thing is survival. Stabilise these patients. And it's amazing to see. It is certainly bizarre seeing stuff. You don't feed them, of course, but whatever's in there is going to be pouring out. And get everything out of the stomach, let them settle, and then go and do the repair surgery. And my vets didn't have to marsupialise either of these, but they had to go in there and do surgery straight away. And these are long surgeries after hours. In the middle of the night, they're doing it 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning.
Wow, okay.
The nurses there. So it's an expensive exercise. Very expensive exercise. You're talking anywhere between $6,000 to $15,000 from $6,000. It's very expensive. So this is probably a good time to say, make sure your dogs are insured, especially if you've got a dog that is a breed that's predisposed to bloat. Pet insurance wouldn't hurt at all for those sort of breeds, because if your dog does get bloat, their life can be saved, but it's not a cheap exercise.
Well, well done to the team at your vet clinic.
Yeah, good kids.
Now, speaking of kids, like little kids, babies, in fact, Rob's about to become a grandfather, believe it or not, because there's going to be a baby hanging around his house from time to time. Now, if you've got a baby due, or just happened, and you've also got a dog that thinks it's in charge of the house, what are some things you should be worried about, or should you be worried?
Yeah, absolutely. You never, ever leave a dog and a child unsupervised, certainly not as babies. And in fact, don't leave them unsupervised up until the child is 12 years of age.
Why is that?
Because it's shown the dog most likely to bite your child is either your own dog or the neighbour's dogs. That's statistics. That's not me coming up with just a pie in the sky thing. That's statistics. The dog most likely to bite your child is either your own dog, most likely, or your neighbour's dogs, because children are sometimes unknowingly threatening or cruel to the dog without even knowing that's happening.
Like hitting it or jumping
on it, or you're having a toy that's frightens the dog, and so the dog reacts. And the child is trying to be nice to the dog, but the fear, just all of a sudden, the dog will bite. So never leave them unsupervised. That's the first thing. And as I've told my beautiful son-in-law Blake, when the child is born, bring some of the things home from the hospital and let the dog sniff, not play, not
some
stick
things.
'em.
What do you mean things?
Oh, it could be a dirty nappy, believe it or not. Some clothes that the child's worn in hospital, something straight away. Bring it home. Now, you don't have to put it on the dog's nose or near the dog's nose. The dog has, remember, they have a sense of smell. There's 10,000 times plus the sense of smell we have. Just having them there on the table is enough, just somewhere nearby.
Just getting used to something's different.
Get used to that smell. That's really important. Never allow your dog to play with baby toys. Never allow the dog to play with dolls that look like babies. I'm going to tell you a very sad thing. It was many years ago, back in the 1980s.
Right.
It was awful. This is terrible. The dog was brought in to be put to sleep because the dog grabbed hold of the baby and just flicked it and broke its neck straight away. The baby was just put down on in a bassinet on the ground while the person was hanging up the washing. The dog had been playing with toys like this all its life. They gave it dolls to play with, and it would just flick the dolls. And it was just doing the same. It was just play behaviour. The play behaviour killed the child, and it was dreadful for the family. You never get over that sort of thing.
No.
So do not allow your dogs to ever play with dolls. It's just not on at all. Make sure that the dog understands that these things, the nappies, the baby blankets, the old toys that the baby has, they're not playthings. You never give your dog old toys from the babies. Never give your dog old blankets, old nappies. Don't wipe them down with it. Throw them out if you don't want them anymore, but don't give them to the dog to play with.
So your dog doesn't instinctively know this is a harmless little baby I should be nurturing.
Well, it's nurturing. Nurturing may be grabbing it and pulling it along. It's making a noise, it's squealing. What's wrong with you? Grab it and see. The other thing I always tell people is do walk with the baby and the dog. Form the pack so that then it does become, yes, I've got to protect this as part of the pack. So in with the pram or into the haversack in front of you, whatever you're going to do with your baby, and take the dog and the baby for a walk. Do that as a daily thing. It's not a bad thing at all.
You're now a team.
You're now a team. We always had, and we're going to have it again now, internal security doors. So the dog could sleep. In fact, we put the dog's bedding outside the baby's room, but with the security door.
The gate, yeah.
The dog would lay there, and so it's protecting the child and forming a bond with the child, but can't go in with the child. So internal security doors are a really good idea. It sounds weird to have one of those screen internal doors. It doesn't have to have the fly screen on it, but just the internal the security doors. We had those installed inside the house and on the baby's room. That's where it would go. So the dog could be out there, the baby's inside asleep, and mum or dad and dad can get on with doing whatever they need in the kitchen or anywhere else, knowing that the baby is very safe and protected by the dog. The dog starts becoming very protective of that child. The other thing I do is I tell people the same thing: watch TV, read books, whatever, with the baby and you. Listen to the podcast, of course. And
obviously.
Relax with the baby and the dog together in the same room. How long since you've been on a picnic, Stephen?
A long time.
Exactly. You've got a backyard. Use it. Use the backyard as a picnic area. So, or go on a picnic. Take the dog and the baby. Sit down. The dog has to learn respect, to lie down, not scavenge food. You can give the dog treats, of course, but have the team, the whole team together What have we got together? The pack, eating together.
So dogs won't get jealous. Or do you think they will?
This is what we're avoiding by doing all this. Yeah, this has got to become part of it. They can become jealous, so you've got to be careful. And train, as your child grows, actually, I'd always try and train the child to have respect, of course, for the dog. The American Society of Child and Adolescent Psychology and Psychiatry said that children that grow up with dogs make much more empathetic and sympathetic people as adults.
Goes without saying, we all know that.
The other thing that, as a child grows, having a bond with a dog, they may be even wanting to train a dog or train their own dog. And the other thing that happens is that children that train dogs are much better students at school because they learn how to learn. How often do you say to your child, go and study? Have you ever shown your child how to study? Nope, most people don't. But your dog will. Your dog will teach your child how to study, believe it or not.
If they're teaching their dog how to do things.
Exactly.
Or trying to, yeah.
One of the best ways to learn something is to teach it. You have to learn a bit of background when you're teaching. And all of a sudden, if you're teaching a dog to sit and teaching a dog to drop and teaching a dog to do things, you're teaching how to learn and you're learning how to learn yourself. Repetition, doing it again and doing things over and over. That's how you teach a dog. Well, all of a sudden you realise, I do have to go over my notes a few times. I do have to write them down a few times. All of a sudden you're learning how to learn. Certainly that's how I eventually learnt how to study.
Well, the other thing, of course, which would be very, very beneficial to any baby is to have the doggy pod just on a loop playing every night.
Well,
so
that'd be
it just
great.
gets used to hearing
Unbelievable.
the
Be
doggy
fantastic for
pod.
both.
I mean, that's got to be
Ideal.
Now we're going to talk about crossbred dogs, of which there are millions of them around the world. And a lot of those always seem to have oodle in the name somewhere. My dog's the same. It's got an oodle in it. Why are poodles so popular to breed with other dogs?
Sure. It started years ago when someone with dogs as therapy thought, if we cross a Labrador and a poodle, we might get a dog that's hypoallergenic because poodle hairs. Well, poodle hair doesn't shed, and so people thought it to be a slightly different type of hair and less cause less allergies to people. So they were trying to get a dog that would cause less allergy, have non-shedding hair, have the brains of both the Labrador and a poodle, which are very brainy, but the work ethics of a Labrador, which they'll work all day long without chucking the towel in. They were trying to do that. But what happened was not all the progeny were what you wanted, so it didn't work. Some of the progeny
So that was what, a
work.
Labradoodle?
Labradoodle. Some of them shed hair, some don't. And in fact, a dermatologist has come out and said, a specialist immunologist actually came out and said, it's not true. The oodle cross he's found in his practice hasn't been necessarily hypoallergenic. He found people that were just as allergic to the oodle crosses as they were to any other dog. And if you wanted a dog that had true low allergy, you would look towards a poodle or a Lagotto or a Bichon. These breeds that definitely do not shed. Once you start crossing them, it tends not to work as well. This is not me saying it. This is a dermatologist in practice saying it hasn't worked for him with his patients.
But why oodles, though? Why poodles? I mean, obviously poodles are smart dogs.
Yeah, but
are they good for breeding, crossbreeding?
Poodles themselves are great. It's not they're good for crossbreeding. People are doing it simply because they can use the word oodle. It's fashion. It's been fashion. That's all it's been. It's like years ago it was 101 Dalmatians. Before that it was let's everybody get a collie. And before that, didn't everybody want Rin Tin Tin? It's fashion. And unfortunately, that's all it is. A great idea in its concept of getting a dog that had low allergy and all those things, but it hasn't worked other than it's worked for fashion. Now, the other thing that can work sometimes, however, is what's called hybrid vigour. you get two pedigree of animals and cross them together, different breeds.
Like?
Well, in chickens it works very well. In chickens,
A chicken and a dog.
no, just two chickens.
Oh, right. Okay.
The majority of animals that are bred in chickens are crosses of two pedigree animals, and they find they get hybrid vigour. They get a more robust animal with less problems to produce meat animals or whatever. That's worked pretty well in the meat industry for chickens, and it's been very successful. Chickens, when we back in the day in the 60s, chickens were very expensive. People would only buy them as a Sunday roast. Now everybody buys them because they can mass produce them because hybrid vigour worked. However, hybrid vigour only works if you get a very sound, purebred dog to start with another very sound, different breed, purebred dog, which means lots of testing on those breeds, on that individual before they're done. Unfortunately, because they're fashionable, a lot of people have bred them for one reason, money. And so they get the cheapest poodle they can find, do no testing on it, the same with whatever other breed, cross them together, and lo and behold, what is the veterinary profession finding? A lot of these animals have knee problems, like saving patellas it's called, or hip problems, with what's called it's a special disease where the head of the hip actually crumbles up, and it really causes real major surgery. Legg-Perthes disease in people it's called, and the head of the femur, the ball part of the hip and socket joint, just breaks up inside the dog. So you have to have major surgery, or they've had other problems, heart issues or eye problems, etc. So for it to work, they have to have very sound animals. And some people are doing that. Some of the breeders that want to breed these oodles start off with very, very sound dogs. But then if they say, oh, but now we've got 3 or 4 generation oodle of some kind, but then they're just inbreeding again. They're going back to just trying to get one breed, and then they have to develop a standard. And there's nothing wrong with that because years ago, the Doberman, how did the Doberman get its name? Because her Doberman, the tax collector, said, I want a breed of dog that has these attributes. And he just crossed a whole lot of the breeds to get what he wanted. More recently, we had a person in the United Kingdom saying, look, I like boxers that have short tails because we can't tail dock anymore. But he wanted to breed boxers with short tails. So he got corgis, the Pembroke corgi that had short tails, crossed them with boxers and kept on interbreeding to get this short tail gene in and have boxers. He has boxers now with short tails. So there's nothing wrong with interbreeding. Now, in fact, to some extent, we've got to be careful with pedigree dogs. I mean, with pedigree dogs, they believe that they've got to look at the integrity of the pedigree all the time. And I understand that. That's fine. But it's not just the pedigree. It's if it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck, at the end of the day, it's a duck. It's not so vital to look at the pedigree as to look at the soundness and how the animal has the attributes. We talked on previous ones about temperament and versus personality, has the attributes of temperament and all the other attributes that go with that particular breed standard. That's what they're judging against when they judge pedigree dogs. So for me, it's not so much important as the look of the dog, the personality of the dog, the temperament of the dog. All of that has to fit the breed standard. And the pedigree should be almost secondary. But then you have to have that soundness as well.
Have you heard of like an oodle cross, say a Labradoodle crossed
Labradoodle, schnoodles, which is
crossed
a
with
schnauzer.
another
Oh,
cross, oodle cross?
No, I haven't heard of an oodle.
Yeah.
An oodle with a doodle, that'd be a male poodle.
Okay, heaven forbid you get bitten by a dog, maybe your own dog, which happens from time to time, or, you've gone to pat a dog in the street and, it's decided it doesn't like you. It's drawn blood, it hurts. What should you do immediately? Obviously, if you think it's bad, you should go to a doctor. But if it's drawn blood and it's actually cut you deeply, and you don't want to go to the doctor, what should you look out for?
What you should do is go to the doctor.
You should. I mean,
Regardless.
is there such a thing as rabies in Australia
No,
anymore?
we don't have rabies, but in some of the countries that people are listening to right now, there are rabies. And in every country, including Australia, dogs can have bacteria that can be injected into your skin and cause an abscess and cause severe fever and inflammation and a lot of problems. You could get septic. So the first thing you should do, of course, is wash it with a disinfectant wash, not just soap and water, but some sort of disinfectant wash. Certainly worthwhile. If you haven't, then soap and water. If it's bleeding, definitely put pressure on it. One of the things I always keep in my cupboard is peroxide, 3% hydrogen peroxide. Stings like crazy, and or medical alcohol, stings even crazier, but it kills a lot of bugs straight away. And antibacterial ointments, if you've got some, the best antibacterial ointments, would you believe, are eye ointments, because they have to be sterile. They go in the eye.
Yeah.
So they're good to put on in the dressing and get yourself to the doctor. Tetanus exists no matter where you are. So tetanus is...
So you could get tetanus from being
a
bitten by a dog?
Yeah. The bug is Clostridia tetani, and the Clostridia bugs are really bad news. So make sure your tetanus is up to date. Your doctor will check that straight away. If it's a puncture wound, they won't be stitched. Doctors don't like stitching puncture wounds because you stitch the bacteria inside. So what do? They put antibacterial stuff inside and they give you antibiotics to take.
Yeah.
In just about every dog bite, you need some antibiotics just to prevent it from getting too terrible. If it's a significant dog bite, you will need antibiotics.
So either way, if you get bitten by a dog, you absolutely have to put some sort of disinfectant.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, don't just,
Don't tough it out and think, it's okay, Band-Aid will be fine.
No, just put something on it to kill the bugs inside and keep it clean. And if it starts getting a red whirl around it, get yourself to the doctor real fast, because that usually means a sign of septicemia around it.
If you get what? A red...
Like a red ring around the bite wound. It starts getting red and starts...
Swollen.
Yeah, if you push it and you get pus out, definitely get yourself to the doctor.
Now, avid listeners of the Doggy Pod would know from time to time one of our most popular and sometimes controversial segments is Dr. Rob's Top 5, drum roll. And Dr. Rob's gone out on a limb this week with his top 5 dumbest or stupidest, which doesn't sound nice to me, but anyway.
No, but I really do have the top 5 stupidest.
Okay, Rob, over to you.
All right, coming in at number 5 is Earthlings. They can murder each other and think they're going to get away with it. Seriously, and they do that. They murder each other. Of course, number 4 is Homo sapiens. Mass murders. Genocide. Unbelievable. Happening in our world today. Has happened in the past. Mao Zedong was the worst. He actually was worse than Hitler or the Russian guy, yeah. But,
Stalin?
Stalin, that's him. Yeah, couldn't think of him. And number 3 is persons, because they go out and war against each other and make weapons to kill each other. Persons do that. Humans are number 2. There's enough food on this planet, Stephen, to feed everybody. And yet starvation occurs. How does that work? Enough food to feed everyone, and yet starvation still occurs because we won't distribute the food to everybody. And number 1 is people. Yes. Why? Because we destroy where we live. We're destroying with pollution. Forget climate change. You may believe it, you may not. Doesn't matter. We're still...
Well, it kind of does.
COVID proved, don't move people around. All of a sudden, the sky's cleared. You could see the mountains. People were breathing. No, we put mercury in the water so that when we eat our fish, we're going to poison ourselves. We put bugs in our water so that to make sure when the water goes a bit low, and it is going a bit low, there are bugs there that kill us. The air pollution is ridiculous. We're doing all these things. If we stopped doing a lot of this stuff, everything would clear. The air would clear. We'd have less cancers, of course, because there'd be less cancer within the UV light coming in, all sorts of things would improve dramatically. But no, they're the top 5 stupidest species on the planet, all of them human beings.
So as you can gather, Dr. Rob's gone a little bit off topic this week, but that's all right. We'll let him have a little rant from time to time. It's good for him to get it out of his system.
No,
Otherwise,
because
it backs up, and trust me,
yeah, it's
listeners,
bad.
It's ugly. But anyway, hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Doggy Pod this week. As you know, every Friday, a new episode comes out. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram. And, of course, hope you keep enjoying the show. So we'll see you next week. And now that Rob's got down off his soapbox,
I will finish off with Alexander Poe, famous poet back in the 18th century, who said histories are full of examples of fidelity of dogs rather than that of human beings.
fidelity of dogs.
That's what he said. Fidelity of dogs to people, to each other.
I'm going to have to ponder that one. Goodbye.